welcome to the latest edition of the Public Sector I Heart You podcast. I'm Rebecca Davis, Chief Executive at West Midlands Employers, and I'm really pleased today to be joined by Tim Johnson, Chief Executive of the City of Wolverhampton Council. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about local government, what the future holds for the sector, leadership and the brilliant opportunities that the sector offers to those coming into it as a career pathway. Tim, thank you ever so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
Brilliant. So really, I know you've started your career in local government many years ago and have worked in different parts of the country and have worked across our region, I think in Walsall previously as well. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your career highs.
Yeah, I've had a 30-year plus career in local government, and I sort of, like many people, I kind of stumbled into a career in local government. I came out of university, wondered what to do, and I trained as a planner and originally tried for a planning job, didn't get one, and sort of started to follow a career in kind of regeneration in different guises, first in Liverpool and moving on to different councils. So, but I've always chosen to kind of work in places where felt I could make a difference, and I've had some wonderful experience, some crazy experiences. I wish I'd written a book, because you look back and you think just of all those kind of career highs, the things that have really made a difference, and some of the low moments. But it's been great. Been in the West Mids now for 20 years, so yeah, it's been a fantastic period.
Brilliant. So I know a lot of people say that their connection with communities is what drives them in local government. So how do you keep that connection as a chief executive when you've got a full diary? What connects you to the community in Wolverhampton? Yeah,
it's a really important thing that you stay very grounded. You know, I work in a city that is a fantastic, very diverse city, some wonderful, great things going on, but also people living really tough lives. So I do make it my business to get out and about and not just be an organisational leader, you know, getting in terms of services and engaging with staff, but actually being part of the city and being invested in the life of the city in different ways, and just being open and accessible, and not being scared to actually have honest conversations with people. And I think it's always a challenge between being optimistic and ambitious for a place, but acknowledging that right now there are some real challenges and having that self-awareness. But it's a really important part of, as an organisational leader, but I also would say part of my job is being a place leader and not being, you know, recognising the value of keeping engaged with people and what their actual lived experiences. And you know, many leaders run the risk of sitting in lovely offices in nice buildings, and they lose that.
Yeah, and it's what drives, I think, many people who come into our sector. It's the ability to make a difference, to see that difference and to feel it. So tell us a little bit about, as Chief Executive, you're one of the lead Chief Executives for our region alongside John Rouse from Stoke-on-Trent. What's your role in bringing together sort of a region as diverse as the West Midlands, 32 councils, and how has that been evolving and what's that journey? Yeah,
so it's interesting because obviously when you're in an organisation, by definition, you're the most senior person in that organisation. So you have the levers that you have running an organisation. It's very different when you're operating in a network of peers. And I lead the West Midlands Executive Board, which is the 7 metropolitan kind of unitaries in the West Mids with the combined authority. And that's a relatively new thing, and has been a really interesting opportunity to shape the next era of our combined authority devolution. And John and I co-chair the wider West Midlands, the old footprint, as it were, and increasingly look into how we put the West Midlands case into national government, into what is a very changing environment for all sorts of reasons, and make sure that, you know, the great practice that we see across our region is reflected into national government. But it can be like herding cats, because we've got lots of very strong, influential people in our region, and that's great, and they bring with them a wisdom and experience, but trying to corral that and make sure there's a focus and a kind of real balance to what we do is quite a challenge at times, I have to say.
And I think even though people's job titles are the same, organisations are technically the same, so much difference, isn't there? What one challenge is, hugely. What one benefit is for one area is a deficit to the other. It's really hard, I think, to find commonality.
Yeah, and I think as a region we want to shine a light on all of our different places and councils for different reasons. And, you know, everywhere has their strengths. Every organisation has things it's great at, things that they want to improve, you know, and one of the things that gives me huge confidence about the future is the talent we see across our sector. We don't always shine a light enough on that or play into it on our collective behalf, and that's one of the ambitions I have, is that we don't just, deal with our own organisation and its ambitions and its performance, but where we've got that capability, we use it a bit more across the wider region.
Yeah, and I think that's a real challenge, really, is how do we keep building that pipeline of talent? I know you've done a lot of work in Wolverhampton on succession planning, on investing in leaders at different levels in the organisation. Just tell me a little bit about what you've done there and why it's so important and why you've seen the benefits. Yeah,
so I've always thought that there's a strength that comes from what people often term growing your own. People come into local government for multiple reasons, but at the heart, generally speaking, people are public servants. They want to make a difference to people's lives. And it was a reflection of that, but also a reflection that actually the talent pool wasn't what it needed to be. And we wanted to shape our leaders of the future very much in the eye of our city, with a genuine shared culture, which is values-led. And the way we've done that is very much to invest in our leadership across all different strands of the organisation. And I can't honestly remember the last time we made a major appointment from outside of our organisation, at a whole range of, heads of service, deputy director, director level, which is great. Yeah. So I look now, and the profile of our leadership cohort, vast majority of them have built their careers in Wolverhampton and are wanting to build their future careers in Wolverhampton. And to me, as an organisational leader, that's probably the most important thing I do, because that gives us resilience as an organisation, but also gives us the capability to be ambitious, to be innovative, to drive change and transformation in a world where that's really critical. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's shaping their leadership journey, isn't it? And giving them that sense of ownership of the city. Yeah. What shaped you most as a leader? What are the things where you would sort of highlight and say, those were probably the pivotal experiences which have sort of stayed with you, either good or bad, I suppose? Yeah, I think often in life, you're right, you learn from both the bad and good experiences, and I've had the fortune to work with people who've been really inspirational. And similarly, I've worked with people who, frankly, didn't share my personal values, and that's quite challenging. And, not that I ever expected to be sitting in the chair I am, but I thought if I ever was going to be an organisational leader, I wanted to be someone who's very much true to who you are. You've got to be true. You've got to be authentic to who you are. But you've got to kind of, you've got to build those, you've got to build a culture that is value-led. That's the thing I talk about more than anything. And it builds loyalty. It builds that commitment. And, being kind, being empathetic, that's a good thing in life, because that creates a very positive human response. And sometimes we can get a bit carried away with wonderful sort of theories of leadership. I think at the heart of it is some fairly simple concepts, and I've just tried to have those front and centre to my kind of leadership. Yeah, and I suppose it's when it gets challenged, isn't it? It's knowing that you've got that strong value set, and absolutely. It's grounded in the organisation, and it gives you that basis for. But it's not all on you as well. Yeah. So organisations that have a point of failure, which might be sometimes quite inspirational, very dominant leaders, that's quite a risk, because life means often people move on, and then what? What I've tried to do is make sure that it comes back to that growing your own, how you build leadership that is. Has that shared values, and it creates an ethos, a kind of one organisational ethos. But it also means that you aren't front and centre to everything. So if I'm not there, I don't worry that the organisation's kind of going down a different route, or it's kind of it's operating on a different set of values, because I know that's front and centre to every single one of us. Yeah, no, absolutely. You need more than one person able to drive the car, don't you? Yeah, and be confident enough to have that kind of distributed leadership. That anyone who thinks that it's all about them, or particularly in large complex organisations like councils, they're deluded. I take great strength in that, and I'm very comfortable and confident not leaving, that sounds a bit dismissive, but I trust in my colleagues to get on and do things. They don't need me looking over their shoulder. So I'm a very empowering leader, because I think that's a real win-win.
Brill. So the future for local government, it feels as though there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm very much glass half full. I think there's huge potential there, and it's for us to grasp and not waste that opportunity. What are your hopes for the sector? What would you like to see if, we're looking back in 3 years going, wow, it's changed fundamentally, and this is why?
I mean, it's an unbelievably significant moment for local government. And I know the ambition that the government's shown, and the white paper, and it was very bold in its ambition about changing in our sector. Inevitably it's created quite a degree of anxiety and, soul searching across lots of councils. But I think I see it as a moment where we've got the opportunity to really shape what great public services look like. And I use public services quite deliberately, because I think, when we look at our places and we look at the communities we serve, we need all public services working together in a very more integrated way than we have. Councils have got a specific kind of leadership role, because I guess we're always going to be there in some shape or form, and we have that place leadership responsibility. But I see a big part of my role being about how we convene other public services and how we sell what an amazing opportunity and chance this is for people to come in, shape something genuinely that will be impactful more than it has. As difficult as change is, and as difficult is, the transition from different governments and all the rest of it, I'm immensely excited by the moment we're in. This is the kind of stuff that gets me excited. I'm not great on steady sort of ship, as it were. So, but we've got to kind of build confidence that we can lead through this, and we can have optimism whilst we work through the inevitable challenges that I know people are facing. Yeah.
What skills do you think we need to have in the sector for people to really be able to grasp that going forward? Because it's a different world, isn't it? I think the skill set, the characteristics, the behaviours people are going to need to display are perhaps very unfamiliar, I think, to some.
Yeah, I think, if you think about local government used to be seen as, we used to deliver services. That was kind of what we were seen as. I think we've evolved into being, place leaders, system leaders. And I think the ability to think and shape things strategically is a particular skill set, to see things in the round, to understand them in the round. I think the need for really sophisticated kind of partnership skills has never been stronger. And just simply putting people in a room and thinking magic's going to happen and they will become beautifully aligned and have a single version of things is not really the reality. So I think how we develop those relationship skills, those partnership skills, and I think they are skills. I don't think that you have them just simply because you might have a role where they're required. So I think, sometimes people refer to them as those kind of softer leadership skills. I think they're absolutely integral to how we move from where we are now to that future. So I don't ever doubt people have got those technical skills in some respects, but I think it's the broader leadership skills, those capabilities to work collaboratively, to, and particularly in a kind of partnership environment where you can't just lean on the leverage you've got as an organisation leader. You've got to deploy different and build those alliances and build your case and make your case, but in a positive, optimistic way, because I do feel in challenging, difficult times, people are attracted and inspired by positivity and ambition. Yeah. I think we need to hang on to that, and I see that as a big part of what I'm trying to do right now.
I think it's how to create that common momentum, isn't it, where everyone feels involved and feel that there's a degree of shared benefit. Yeah. And I'm not sure that other sectors see or hear that at the moment, whether they just think, that's happening to local government. We'll let them sort that out.
Yeah, and we're such a varied kind of sector, aren't we? We've got different types of councils going through different types of change. Even councils of the same sort of kind of structure as such. They're always subject to change. People come and go, different leaders, different political kind of leadership, etc., etc. So it's always been a very dynamic kind of environment in which we work. But we've just got to make sure we understand and shine a light on where we've got that, that delivery is happening and that leadership is there. And I feel very optimistic about certainly our region. I think there's real spirit and joint endeavour, where we can work really effectively and collaboratively together for our collective and individual benefit. And it's both, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I'm an employee of the City of Wolverhampton Council. It's my city. It's the place I focus on. But I want its fortunes to be intrinsically linked with the fortunes of the West Midlands. Yeah,
absolutely. So one dimension really of local government is the political dimension, which is, you know, unique, I think, for people coming in to experience and work in. How would you sort of say the role of chief executive has evolved in terms of working in that political space over time? Because I think it's becoming much more sophisticated, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a fairly unique characteristic of, you know, when I look across different bits of the public sector, or, you know, different organisations, and you compare what being a chief executive in local government looks like compared to that. You know, the difference for us is we work to a political leadership, and that dynamic between chief exec and leader is fundamental. You know, I've worked for a number of leaders, and every leader is different. I have huge respect for elected councillors. You know, they give of themselves for the benefit of their communities, and it can be quite a difficult relationship, because obviously, you know, they come from all different walks of backgrounds and might not have the sort of experience and confidence that senior officers have, and how you manage that relationship so that you do that in a very, very respectful way. So it is something you constantly have to be live to, and as well as the responsibilities serving all, in my case, 60 elected councillors from all sorts of different backgrounds. It can be really tough. But again, it comes back to being true to your values as well. And sometimes as a organisation leader, in my respect, you have to be the one that sometimes calls out things that aren't right or benefits, and conversely lean into the stuff that's really good and positive.
Yeah, absolutely. What would your advice be to someone coming in to the sector who perhaps hasn't worked in that political landscape, about how they can get exposure and experience to that? Because it's often only senior officers will have that real level of engagement with cabinet or opposition parties. It's how can someone get that to be able to progress?
Yeah, I don't think people should fear it. You know, I think sometimes people do. That it's something that can be an impediment to people, you know, considering a career in local government. You know, these are people who have got great intention and ambition for their places, and you know, have that kind of electoral mandate to do it. So we try and expose our wider kind of officer cohort to political leaders, because I think they then get a sense of where they're coming from and how they navigate that. It's got more difficult in the way we work as councils under a cabinet system. There's typically less exposure for officers, so we consciously try and redress that by making sure that if you've got an officer working on a particular piece of work, they are the person that comes and briefs the politician, the cabinet member, the leader, or whatever. It's not all the preserve of the director or chief exec or whatever. So they get that exposure as they're developing through their career. So it's not, tries to reduce some of the kind of inhibitions about that engagement. And I think that's a good thing. There's probably more we could do around that, just in terms of building that shared understanding, if I'm honest.
I think that exposure is key, isn't it? And trying to get that early in people's careers so they don't fear it, and it doesn't become a barrier. I know part of the change has been how people work. When I started my career, we were always in the office, 9 to 5. That's members would come in, we'd see lots of different members, we'd engage. You don't have that quite so much now, where the office isn't quite the same hub it used to be. So how are you sort of seeing changes to the way people work impacting in other areas, and how are you managing that at Wolverhampton?
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it? But, you know, that although, you know, we try and make sure that when we've got sort of set piece kind of political kind of engagement, so, you know, whether it's briefings of leaders, cabinet meetings, whatever, we encourage people to be around the building, because sometimes it's just that informal engagement that you can, that sort of quick chat on the stairs kind of thing, to just kind of build those relationships. I think that's really kind of key. There's no magic solutions, and, you know, our councillors in Wolverhampton are lovely people. You know, they're the kind of people who will stop and have a chat with you, and just that kind of, you build those sort of personal relationships as well as the professional relationships. And I think, you know, there's no magic solution to that, but it probably has got more difficult as we've evolved into more flexible working patterns, where people aren't in the office all the time, and they just get that more kind of informal interaction, which I think is part of it. But as I say, I think it's, you know, how you consciously do that and bring people into that political space as well as just the informal interactions. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that applies for bringing people in at the early part of their career, doesn't it? So thinking about young people coming into the sector and how we attract them in, tell me a little bit about how you're trying to get capture that young workforce coming into the council and selling local government really as a place to be, because it's a great career venture.
Massive. I mean, I think it's a frustration for us all. Like sometimes there's almost a bit of a reputation lag about local government, as if it's some, you know, councils are some kind of backward. So we try and really portray in lots of quite creative ways what great careers you can have in local government, whether it's the sort of comms work we do, whether it's some of the work we do around, you know, work experience and different things, just to kind of open the door a little bit and encourage our workforce to be part of, you know, to advocate and sell careers in local government. It's also just getting out and about and kind of, you know, into those spaces, whether it's into the, you know, educational kind of spaces and just, you know, flying the flag, you know, and particularly, you know, I'm very proud of our organisation, and I think people can have great careers in local government. And one of the key attributes I don't think we sell enough of, and we're trying to embed this in the way we do, is, you know, sometimes you come into a job and it's just not for you. The beauty of local government is you can, you know, there's hundreds of different career opportunities within the organisation. So we're trying to make that much more easy for people to flip into different roles and different opportunities. So you can come in and have a great career, but it might be in something completely different to what you originally came in to do.
Absolutely, you might come in finance and suddenly transfer into communications or marketing, and there's the beauty of being able to do that. I think we don't always make it as easy for people, though, do we? To sort of necessarily move around. We sort of put blockers in sometimes.
Yeah, we make that quite hard. It almost becomes you've kind of got to get a new job. Yeah. So one of the things we've recently done is we've got a big organisational change programme, our Future Council, which is about how we shape our council for the future and respond to all the challenges and opportunities. And within that, we've created a programme called our Future Council Champions. And what it does is, and I think we've got about 70 or 80 colleagues that have put themselves forward, it gives them the opportunity to be involved in activity and projects and initiatives out with where they currently work, which gives them some sort of informal experience of working in different teams, of working in different projects. And I've always felt that encourage people to just fill your pockets with different skills, experiences for when those opportunities arise. And it gives us the capability to kind of, you know, sometimes just spot some really talented people who've got a real, you know, sort of capability in a particular way. And you think, you'd be really great at working in X. That kind of thing.
Space over here.
And sometimes people try stuff and you go, you know what, I thought I'd be really good and I did enjoy this, not for me. But there's no harm done by trying and not. Conversely, some people get a different career path and get experience that gives them more likelihood of achieving that in the future. So it's things like that both formally and informally we encourage people to do.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely brilliant, and I know the future for local government, there's so much opportunity, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Tim, so thank you ever so much.
You're very welcome, we've enjoyed it.